Welcome to the first episode of the So Many Roads podcast. I'm your host, Pete. I'm a teacher, an amateur musician, and a Grateful Dad here in the New Haven, Connecticut area. And I was looking for a project as I'm heading towards semi-retirement. And my kids are now getting older and growing up, and I need something to do. So my original thought was, grab myself a really nice pair of headphones and dive deep into specific years and things like that, because despite the Grateful Dead being a part of my life since I was a teenager, I've never really done a deep dive on any of it. I know the basics, but I really don't know that much. And that's kind of the way I live my life. I'm a broad thinker. I know a little bit about a lot of things, but not a lot about much. So my idea was originally just to listen, but then I said, why not also speak to some people? So I recruited my friend here, Dave, longtime neighbor, a former bandmate. And I recruited him to do the technical side, and we figured why not record some of this. The more I got talking to people, the more people had things to share. And the more I listened to Sirius satellite radio, the more I realized callers have a lot to say and a lot of questions and a lot of cool stories. So I want to try to collect some of them. So I figured Dave was our first guest, since he's my partner on this project. And he saw quite a few Grateful Dead shows, definitely more than me. And I got some questions for you, Dave, particularly on the technical end. So why don't you introduce yourself and just give us a little rundown of sort of like your pre-Grateful Dead life, what music was exposed to you in your own household or in your neighborhood growing up. Actually, I don't even know where you grew up. So just tell us a little bit about your pre-Grateful Dead moment and what you were into before we segue into sort of how you discovered the Grateful Dead.
My childhood, I grew up in New York. And around my house, my first memories were the Beatles. Abbey Road, Let It Be.
It's a good one.
And some of my first memories were Crosby, Stills and Nash, Sweet Judy, Blue Eyes. My mother loved Stevie Wonder. And then came the disco years in my house. There was a couple of years of Donna Summer, Love to Love You, Baby.
What year were you born?
66.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So disco years, you were already like a preteen.
Yeah,
Okay.
So there was the disco years. And then as I started to get old enough to go to shows, I was very fortunate. My mother would take me to shows,
that's
some really, I was really fortunate being in New York, in Manhattan, to go to the Palladium. That's the only place we ever went, was for shows at the Palladium. I guess my mother was comfortable taking me there, although, so then shows I saw Frank Zappa at the Palladium on a Halloween night, and I was, 12 or something.
You're already cooler than me.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know any of his music, but boy, I remember, anyway, that's a whole nother the thing. And so, yeah, and then I saw my first Rush show, and that launched me into prog rock. Led Zeppelin was still together, not Houses of the Holy.
Coda.
Coda and In Through the Outdoor. In Through the Outdoor was dropped when I was in junior high school, middle school to the new people. And so I was listening to a lot of Zeppelin, The Who, Genesis, Rush. Prog rock was really what I was listening to prior to my introduction to the Grateful Dead.
So this is like early 80s.
Yeah.
Early 80s. What about like Van Halen?
Van Halen, yeah, I touched on Van Halen. I did like Van Halen. I saw them once in the New Haven Coliseum.
They really grabbed me, and I was pretty young at that stage.
Yeah, they were groundbreaking. Eddie Van Halen's guitar was just, it changed the whole scope of
yeah, that's so interesting to me
metal.
because similarly, I had parents that spun a lot of records, particularly my mom. Like I knew Queen's greatest hits by the time I was like 5 years old, like by heart.
That's a good one.
Fleetwood Mac, really good music. And that may just be Gen X in general, that our parents really like good music. I mean, Beatles for me too. And And then, along with you, wasn't so much disco. I was probably a little bit too young for that, but it was like the Police. And like I said, Van Halen 1984 was one of the first albums I actually owned.
With the baby on the cover.
Yeah, and then, and believe it or not, or kind of around the same time I got into the Grateful Dead, I was getting into hip hop. So this is another thing I love about Deadheads is they're generally, their music taste is pretty eclectic. So I'm sure we'll touch upon that at another time in this podcast. But all right, let's move on to how you discovered the Grateful Dead.
All right.
All right, let's talk about your Grateful Dead experience and where did it come from? Where was the spark? Was it an album? Was it a person? Or even let's even start with like, what did you think about the Dead before you actually discovered them, and then what grabbed you?
Well, to me, the Grateful Dead was this mysterious cult-like name. I had no idea. And,
it scared the hell out of me.
Me too. But
when I was young.
But then there were songs that I heard on the radio throughout the years, Truckin', U.S. Blues, and I didn't know that was like the same band that
Ripple. Like that's not scary.
yeah, Ripple. Yeah, and those were songs that I had heard, but I it wasn't on my radar. But yeah.
So probably like a lot of us, you heard the songs, a few of them anyway, right? Didn't know it was the Grateful Dead. Like I had an uncle who was into the Grateful Dead, and like even the Steal Your Face T-shirt he wore scared me. When you're a little kid, you almost think it's like a heavy metal band or even a hardcore metal band. Like the name is really something.
A cult.
Yeah, and so that's my experience too. And I clearly have a moment where that all changed, and they became a soundtrack of my life. And so what's yours? What happened?
Yeah. It was one moment. 1987, I was working at a popular restaurant in Hartford, Connecticut. And there was a huge wait staff there, and we were all friends, and there was we would hang out together, after shifts and parties and stuff. And there was a waitress there, Christine. I forgot her last name. And then a couple of other folks. But Christine was the one that put together the group that was going to go down to Giant Stadium.
She was just like wandering around the restaurant recruiting people?
Well, she knew, she knew people that could handle that situation. So I guess I passed the test. So it was 3 or 4 of us went down. There was 2 waitresses. They corralled me up and away we went. And then there was another waiter there, and we drove down. And I just remember.
What was the vehicle?
I don't remember. It wasn't anything.
It wasn't like a van.
No,
it's not that iconic.
No, this was late '80s. That by that point there was a lot of suburban kids, going to the stadium
just
shows.
Like a station wagon.
Yeah. It wasn't a. But when we got there to Giant Stadium and we pulled into the parking lot or approaching the parking lot, it was frightening, exhilarating, just to see all the flags, everybody flying stuff in the air. And then as we pulled in, I didn't know that this was going on on the planet Earth.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Like I didn't know that there's so much, there was so much connectivity between people. And
so this is summer 1987.
Yeah, this was, yeah.
And so you drove into this massive concrete sea.
And it was hot that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like in July, and it was brutally hot. I remember that. And then I was far more fascinated by, people watching than the music at that point, and then, anyway, but I was hooked. It changed my life. I've listened to the Grateful Dead in some iteration most days of my life.
So literally from that pulling into that parking lot, your whole musical world changed, and you hadn't even seen the show yet.
Right. That's right. It was.
So what is that? What is that? Because I have a similar experience. I guess it's a little different because I loved the music by the time I went, but I pulled into a parking lot the second time I only saw the Grateful Dead twice. The second time I saw them in '95 was in Pittsburgh, and I remember pulling into Three Rivers Stadium, and same vibe. Like I'd seen them in Albany earlier, and that was awesome. But that was like you're under the highway in a parking lot. This was like you said, I referenced a sea of concrete, of people with like rider trucks, with like a stereo equipment in it playing disco, and like for as far as the eye could see, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It is really like nothing else, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a wonderful visual and smells and sounds, and it changed my life.
What happens after? Do you immediately dive headfirst into collecting tapes, or is it a slow grind? Because in 87 and 95, you see over 20 shows. You must have loved it enough where the music meant something too. So when did that start happening?
Pretty much immediately after that show. I had a couple of good friends of mine who were already on the bus for a few years prior to me. They had show tapes,
So and then latched onto them.
They latched onto me because they were a little older. They took me under their wing, and then they were my show crew.
All right, so they're like, "Oh, you went to a show? Come with us." Yeah. Okay. All right. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's and then we would go skiing together. Like it was anyway. But yeah, so Matt and Mike, if you're out there. Thank you.
Yeah, and shout out to Christine who wrangled him. He wrangled by a waitress that we don't remember her last name.
Yeah, so from Matt and Mike, I would get my first show tapes copied. They sounded all horrible, except for the Greek Theater '83, which was probably a board
or something.
Yeah, but anyway. Awesome. So trading tapes, that was it, and then that's how I started my journey.
Okay, Dave, so the main reason why I want to do this podcast is to have people come on who can actually teach me a little something. And so not only get their story and their background, because that's interesting, but I really want to learn. So what crossed my mind having you as a first guest was we had a text exchange some months back. I was actually, again, listening to the radio, and they mentioned a Grateful Dead auction on the website Analoger, which is analog, all in capital letters, and then a small r. And they've got some Grateful Dead collections on there. Fantastic stuff. And I was looking through it, and it was everything from t-shirts to old ticket stubs, backstage passes, and then there was a lot of equipment. And so I remember sending you the link and be like, because I know you're a quasi tech guy, you're interested in some of the technology behind everything. And so I sent you a couple links to the auctions, and you immediately sent me back this picture here. So this was, I had to go back into my text because I knew there was a piece of equipment that you were bugging out over. So I had to go back into my text and print this off to show it to you for our podcast. But this is the picture you sent me, and you were like, this is a dream. So I did a little research, and I wanted to hit you with a couple questions because, to be honest with you, even though we played for, it's almost like a decade, I think we played music together, I don't know anything about the electronic side of music. I knew how to put a pickup into my acoustic guitar, but I literally, it's so pathetic, but I literally would have you plug it in. You know what I mean? Because you were the bass player and I was one of the guitar players, and I would literally be like, can you plug me in and do the PA and do the everything? I don't have a clue. I know not how to get feedback on a mic, and that's about where my expertise stops. So I've been kind of faking it for all these years. I have no idea what any of this thing is. So I think I probably text back like, yeah, that's sweet. I don't have a clue what's going on there. So I printed this off just so we can all be on the same page. And this is no longer up. I can't find the link. It was sold. So what we have here, did sell for around $500,000.
Can you make clear exactly what we're talking about?
Yeah. I'm trying to
What
find
this item is.
Yeah, I'm going to find the
And how
explanation here.
important.
So it's Jerry's guitar rig, and you can help me out because I'm bumbling here with I don't know that he used from 1992 until 1995. Okay, and you know I was actually looking up on YouTube today some of the pictures from that time frame, you know, and there's some good videos and you see it right there, right behind him, you know, and sometimes it's sort of like a shot of him and Vince and you can see it kind of between them. But basically what we have here, I did find the lot details from the auction, even though it's no longer up and running the site because it was sold. Jerry Garcia, large custom rack mounted effects cabinet used on stage with the Grateful Dead during the 1990s. This is a mounted effects cabinet without the wheels, about 5 feet high, about 2 feet by 2 feet. Custom construction by the Dead crew at Ultrasound Studios. Black painted plyboard on wheels, open with removable front and back panels and Allen key latches. And basically what I see from my very limited knowledge is if you go down the rack, so this would be right behind Jerry Garcia, you have some sort of preamplifier, which again, I don't really understand. And then you have a pedal board, which is mounted vertically, which, you know, I'm obviously familiar that guitarists have pedal boards. My son, I've bought him a million pedals throughout the years and such because he's a guitar player. Then some stuff, I have no idea what it is. And then a Macintosh amplifier, which to this day on Analoger, the auction site, they have those up for auction because I guess those were part of the Wall of Sound. And they go for a pretty penny. So I really don't know how this all worked. So I need someone, and I think you're a good start, to start explaining this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And I know I'm not the only one, okay? I'm not the only Deadhead who has no idea what the heck was behind the band. I have a basic little knowledge, okay? But I really don't know that much. So let me just read off what we're looking at specifically.
Okay.
And then you and I can maybe just start at the top and you can kind of explain what's going on here, okay? So for you tech guys out there, if you've never looked into this, and some of this stuff, again, I have no idea what I'm even saying. A GT switchable tube preamp with foot switch, a Roland M120 line mixer, Boss octave pedal, Boss OC2 octave pedal, Boss Turbo Overdrive OD2 pedal, Boss GE7 equalizer, a Mutron 3, Boss OD1 overdrive pedal, another Boss equalizer pedal, an MXR Phase 100 pedal, and these pedals are housed in an SRA rack, and then you have the Macintosh MC 2300 stereo power amplifier. So what is that doing exactly?
Well, first you got to look at the rack as a whole and how it's laid out. You know, I'm not a sound reinforcement engineer, but I've played around and familiar with these components. So the way this rack is laid out is the top half of the rack is Jerry's guitar controls, effects, EQs, his pedals, and then the lower half of the rack is the way to send out his sound to the board.
Okay, so the top part is him
it's
tinkering with his sound.
Yep.
And then the bottom half would be getting it out to the audience.
Getting it out to the soundboard.
Oh, okay.
Who gets it out to the audience.
I got you.
And then gets it back to Jerry through the monitor.
Sure.
So they don't use, instead of guitar amplifiers on stage, he was using the lower half. And one thing that's really important, and it wasn't in the list, are the plain gray panels. Those were very important to this setup. I had to look it up. It's Sound Research Corporation, and these are speaker emulators.
Let's take a look here real quick.
Yeah.
So starting at the bottom, we have like some knobs, and then we have
But let's go
an
top
amplifier.
down.
We'll go top down, but then there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 just like gray slabs. Or
Right.
6 really.
Right.
So what the hell are those?
Those are speaker emulators. Instead of having your amplifiers, your guitar amps on stage or your stacks on stage with preamps, and then miking the amps for the board, and instead of having microphoned amps, they would have these speaker emulators. So and they were powered by the Macintosh amp underneath. So the speaker emulators make it sound like it's like the amp that Jerry wanted. So the Macintosh, which was a very high-end amplifier, is the sound that he wanted to get pushed. It was going to keep it clean. It's hard to explain. You can look it up.
I'm 5 years old. Pretend I'm 5 years old because I don't have a clue.
So instead of guitar amps, he would use speaker emulators.
So it's basically a substitute for using a real amp.
Right, for using, real amps.
Right. Okay.
And so that was how he would send it
So
back to the board.
I don't pay attention that much to this stuff. So when I go see, say for example, I go see Dark Star Orchestra, I'm pretty certain there's amps on stage and they're miking those. So those emulators in Jerry's rig are literally creating that sound without actually having amps on stage.
Right.
And then you have this vertical pedal board, which at least in my world, at least with my children and the guys I played music with, that was always on the floor. And the way I understand this is that this is mounted so it just goes everywhere with it. And then he had foot switches on in front of him. Almost seems, at least the pedals seem simple.
Yeah, right. Because it was because you were using pedals back, in ninth grade.
But who else sounds like Jerry Garcia? And he got all his sounds from those few pedals.
But that's what makes this rack so special. This is as special as Wolf, as guitars. This is truly a musical instrument in and of
that's
itself.
probably a result of the 40 years of tinkering.
It really is.
That's what he came up with.
Yeah, it really is his
Along with all the other guys that he worked with. Yeah.
It's a fascinating.
Yeah, so I get why you're all into it. I just don't know what I would do with it.
Me neither.
But if you had 500 grand, you would have bought
It
it.
doesn't even have a speaker. I can't even.
Oh no, it came with speakers. No, it's not in the picture, but I saw earlier that they gave you speakers too.
All right, when am I gonna?
Yeah, well, that was that was my last question going forward. Is like, what would you do with it? So, but there's probably someone out there right now who had $500,000 to burn that's playing with it.
But the most valuable piece, and everybody out there, if you see a Macintosh, old-looking Macintosh rusty amp at a tag sale for $50, you better buy that thing because they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars now.
Yeah, some people
that working ones.
Yeah, I mean, some people are still bidding on those because from my research, there was quite a few of them being used for the Wall of Sound back in the early 70s. And so even that Macintosh, which was in Jerry's final rig, which is sort of the big chunk there at the bottom of the rig, is that, I think I already said it, but Macintosh MC2300 was part of the original Wall of Sound, and that was one of Bob Weir's amps way back in '73, and then Jerry started using it. And I didn't know anything about this except for the fact that you were bugging out and loving the fact that there was Macintosh amps on the auction site. Again, me just texting back like, oh, cool, not knowing anything about what I was talking about. But apparently, now that I've looked into it, that was home audio. Like
high end.
I don't get the impression from the little bit of research I did that like bands were running out to get Macintosh.
Yeah, no, they were all stacks, Marshall stacks and high watt, I think it was. Yeah, no.
So somehow they tapped into some home audio.
Yeah.
And I would love to know more. I mean, again, I'm
in the Wall of Sound, and I'm sure that there's listeners that will know better than me, but I think I read somewhere that they used, I think it was like 36 of these amps to push the Wall of Sound. But it was a unbelievable.
Yeah, and again, we were recording this probably a little earlier than when we put it out, but you can go on Analoger today and you can see a couple Macintosh amps for sale. And I even think that one of Phil Lesh's basses is on there right now. So it's a very cool site, guys, and that's something that we we texted about, but I was really just lying. I didn't know what I was talking about. I kind of get it now, and I appreciate you helping me out with it, Dave.
Yeah.
I still have a lot to learn. So I do think that maybe in future episodes, we get someone who's even more techie than you to come in and at least with the pedal. So that's what fascinates me the most, is how he got that sound. And I've seen a million Dead cover bands, and they never quite get it. Like it's pretty good, but something's not. So what is it about that rig?
They need an $800,000 budget or whatever, and the lead guitarist will be able to dial it.
I'd love to know where it went. That would be cool too. Which guy grabbed this?
Probably the guy that owns, Wolf or something.
And what's he doing with it? What's he doing with it? So anyway.
Because if you're not, anyway.
So anyway, that's something I want to run by you, Dave. Thanks a lot, man. We're gonna have to dig a little deeper. I want to know more about this stuff. I've been winging it my whole life, just like looking at people and being like, "Oh yeah, cool. You got a new guitar." I don't know what the hell's going on, because I was pretty much just playing acoustic, as you know, and I just bought my son whatever he asked for. I didn't really know what I was buying, so I appreciate it very much. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, great.
So the other thing that I've asked our guests to do is bring any kind of artifact they have. It could be anything. Literally, it could be a ring you bought on lot that means something to you, because I know there's very cool stories about these relics that people have picked up. And I was so excited to have you on to tell me about this relic that you've brought, which I remember seeing literally one of the first times I ever met you, because maybe my memory's off because this is 20 years ago now, but I'm fairly certain you had it hanging going down your stairwell.
Wow, you have a good memory.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I remember, because it's very early on when our kids were babies, and I don't know if you had a dinner party or something, and I was going down your stairs and I was like, that's Jerry Garcia's autograph. And so, Dave, what the, and I didn't even know you were a Deadhead at that point. So I'm dying to know 20 years later, where'd you get this thing? To Dave, Jerry Garcia's autograph, and it's been framed in your house as long as I've known you.
Yeah, I frame it. I don't leave it in daylight. This is one of my favorite possessions.
Okay, so where'd you get this?
Oh boy. So it's a business card, signed, the back of a business card. In 92.
That's it.
In 92, my boss was in San Francisco, and he knew I was a Deadhead. And he was not a Deadhead at all, and he was not one inclined to even deal with Deadheads, but me and him were tight. So he was at SFO, San Francisco's airport, and he goes down to baggage claim, and gets his stuff, and he walks outside. This is how he told me. He walks outside, and there's Jerry Garcia leaning against a Bentley. So somebody must have been like picking him up because he was a BMW guy.
Yeah, but maybe I'm misremembering. I know when they came into a lot of money after Touch of Grey, I want to say I read that Garcia bought a Bentley. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know he got BMW
but
too.
But my boss said he was leaning against a Bentley, smoking a cigarette, clearly waiting for somebody. And my boss, I mean, he would never ask for autographs, but he really liked me, so he went up to Jerry and said, "Hey, somebody close to me is a big fan. Would you mind?" And Jerry said, "Sure," and signed the back of his business.
And all it had was a business card?
Yeah, that was all he had prickly, but it's actually
Better than a napkin.
It's actually the perfect, so yeah, I'm like, so we came back from the trip, I'm like, oh,
That's crazy. Yeah, it's actually a crazy story.
Yeah, and I so now I look it up online. I'm looking to make sure it's like,
oh, it's legit.
Yeah.
I've seen autograph.
But so yeah, there's an actual Jerry Garcia,
and it's
held and wrote on that card.
And it's really legible. Like you can a lot of people's autographs, you can't make out the letters. And, I think the only thing really that he screws up is his A at the end, at least in this signing. I guess the Y a little bit, but it clearly says Jerry Garcia. It's very cool, man.
Yeah.
So as a Grateful Dead fan, that's pretty special.
Yeah, it's more special than my ticket stubs.
And your boss did you a solid there. And it's crazy to me that he wasn't swarmed, but that's just crazy because I love the Grateful Dead. You know what I mean? There's probably a lot of people who walked by him and maybe knew who he was.
You're right. He was in San Francisco.
He's in San Francisco.
Yeah, they probably leave him alone.
Yeah.
I'll bet you.
Yeah, so.
And I'm sure that my boss was very hesitant and genuine about it.
Yeah, but
So,
he
anyway.
did it, man. That's awesome. And
Yep.
what's your old boss's name?
Guy.
Guy, shout out. That's huge. Jerry Garcia's autograph. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, Dave. I really appreciate it, getting this project started. And another thing I wanted to do was just share, with my guests, particularly if they're someone I'm close with, how the Grateful Dead has sort of crossed over our lives. And a couple of my major Grateful Dead memories actually do involve you. So as part of the thank you, before I grill you, I've got a little game to play to end the podcast. But before I grill you, I want to just thank you for driving me to the Fare Thee Well Dead 50 in Chicago, which is one of my Grateful Dead highlights because I wasn't planning on going. At the time, our kids were fairly young still, preteens or whatever, and, money and all that and travel. And my buddy called me up and was like, I've got 2 extra tickets for Friday night in Chicago. And I know you had flown to San Francisco with your wife to see the Santa Clara show. So I immediately got on the phone, called you up and said, I've got free tickets. Is this worth going, And you were like, hell yeah, it's worth going. I will drive. I will pick you up. And literally in 5 minutes, we made the plans. And blink of an eye, we're on the road to Chicago. And you drove the whole way. And it was like the classic road trip. And we didn't have a hotel room driving from New Haven, Connecticut to Chicago. No place to stay. And just tickets for one night. And then miraculously driving through the Poconos. Middle of nowhere. I mean, it felt like the middle of nowhere anyway. And I pulled out my iPod Touch and somehow tapped into some free Wi-Fi in the middle of the mountains, East Coast mountains, and in motion, and pulled 2 tickets for Saturday night. I don't even know how they were on Ticketmaster. And so we spent the weekend out there, and eventually I had to get a hotel room, but I slept in the back of your car in a parking garage, at 42 years old. So classic sort of, early middle age. Hey, we did a Grateful Dead road trip. So thanks for that, Dave.
Yes, you're welcome.
That was really great.
You're welcome.
And then obviously the Sphere.
Yeah, before we go, I just back to the Fare Thee Well. But the 2 tickets were mail order tickets.
Yeah, we should.
And they were beautiful. They were gorgeous.
Now, to be fair, I gave it back to the people who actually bought them.
But those tickets were magical.
We should have kept those and framed those.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't be friends anymore.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so
that's masterful. One of my favorite Grateful Dead movies, and I've seen Fish a lot because that was easier for me growing up in the in the 90s, at least my teenage and college years. So I've seen Fish a million times. So it was quite a pleasure for me to see Trey leading up the guitar, and we had some good moments there. That was fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then the Sphere. Last year we went to the Sphere, both just interested in that venue, checking it out. And I really never thought I'd end up in Vegas again. I'd seen enough of Vegas, but man, that was worth it. That was just, I don't know, almost felt like cherry on top. I don't really know if I need to do Dead and Company ever again. I would, but that was really to me, it was finalizing experience, almost like coming back to the acid tests. All right, we're wrapping this up. I'm going to wrap it up with all guests by putting them on the spot. Okay, so I've got a little game I'm calling Rapid Fire. And it's really just rapid fire questions that you don't know that are coming.
No, I haven't seen them.
Right? I haven't seen them, and so basically, let me pull them up. Actually,
Nope.
my bad.
Yeah.
So
I'm nervous,
You
Pete.
can't see them. You're not allowed to see them. So I actually I've been working on this as we've been working on this project. I have like 70 questions on a document, and what I did this morning is I threw a whole bunch of them into a randomizer, and so these are the. So I've got 5 that popped up. So I want rapid fire, no thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to, this is like a Rorschach test. Whatever pops into your mind, I want to hear it.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
You're not allowed to think. All right.
All right. I'm up for the challenge,
one
I
thing.
think. All right.
First one that popped up, one dead song that never quite clicked for you.
There's a few.
No, spit it out, baby. What you got?
Oh, goodness.
Don't be scared. I got a long list.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of my least favorite. Unbroken Chain. I'll be honest.
All right.
I'll be honest with you. Not my favorite. Yeah.
All right. There it is. All right. Best non-Grateful Dead concert you've ever been to.
Rush. I always loved Rush shows. Their shows were fantastic.
I don't disagree. I've seen Rush a few times myself. Yeah. I think there's a surprising number of Deadheads that like Rush.
They're coming out of the closet now.
Yeah, really.
Because it wasn't
And
cool.
yes, too. I think there's a surprising number of Deadheads that like.
Yeah.
All right. I'm doing this on purpose. This was the only one I didn't randomize because I already know the answer, but I just wanted to see your face. Phil singing, yes or no?
No. I'm sorry.
No, you're not a big fan.
I hope it's tied into the Unbroken Chain.
I know. I'm just messing with you. Okay. You ever met a band member of any famous band in person?
Neil Peart from Rush.
Yeah. So you have a concert ticket, same day, same time, same city. Beatles, Zeppelin, Floyd. Which one you going to?
I'm going to say Zeppelin.
You said that pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I always loved Zeppelin. Yeah.
What do you, over the Beatles?
Yeah. Yeah.
You wouldn't go see the original Beatles? No, I'm just messing with you. That's your answer. That's your answer.
Yeah, no,
I'm not saying my answer is different. I just think it's really hard.
I think that like Zeppelin would deliver the force the force majeure.
Well, it's probably an argument that you wouldn't be able to hear the Beatles because of all the screaming,
Oh yeah, right.
It kills me that I never saw the original Pink Floyd lineup.
I never saw any Floyd either.
Really? Oh, man.
I almost saw Queen, but my father wouldn't let me go to the show. I still hold it against him.
Really?
Yeah.
Give him a call.
Yeah, all my friends went in like 83, and they were playing at Madison Square Garden, 82, 83.
That would have been amazing.
And because it was a school night, he wouldn't let me go.
Ugh.
Dad, I'll never ever give you.
All right, let's wrap it up, Dave, and we're going to wrap it up with what we're going to call Mount Rushmore. So I'm going to give you 4 songs.
Oh.
And then I'm going to make you, so what are your 4 songs?
Mm-hmm.
You only get 4.
Mm-hmm.
Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to pick one that we're going to close the show with for our listeners.
Ooh. 4 songs. Fire on the Mountain. Franklin's Tower. Eyes of the World. And When I Paint My Masterpiece.
Okay.
Off the cuff. So there's you're gonna answer this.
Yeah, well, you only get 4.
Yeah,
That's
those
the
would
game.
be yeah.
Which one you picking for your center of that Mount Rushmore? Which one you want to
I'm gonna
lead our listeners out of the show
I'm gonna
with?
go with Masterpiece because that's always my show carrot. Are they going into Masterpieces?
Yeah.
Or what are they going into? And then when they go into Masterpiece and
You always wanted to hear that.
it's like hitting a slot when they're teasing it.
Playing it just for you.
Yeah, you're just teasing it, and then when they land it, it's always very.
What is it
rewarding.
about that song?
It just the words. I know it's a Dylan song, and I think the Grateful Dead do it better than Bob Dylan. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're allowed to have your opinions.
Yeah, well, it's to me, it's like a travel log. It's you know, it's a transient, fun, almost feels like a European
Road trip.
road trip
Or
with
not-
anguish and
Yeah, not
you
really
know?
road trip, but
Yeah, like a not a bad trip, but close to a bad trip.
yeah, it gets bumpy in there. Yeah, it gets bumpy in there.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and a great song that's fun to play because it's easy.
Four chords.
It's a song that our band used to play, and that was, I actually think it was one of the better songs we played because we had a pedal steel player.
Yeah,
I
he
thought
was
it
very
sounded
good.
really cool, and he was really talented. And I always loved about that song is the key change, because like you said, there's a journey sort of vibe to Masterpiece, and so when it goes into that, I left Rome on my way to Brussels.
Just the A.
It goes to that A chord, and it just sort of changes the vibe, just like getting on an airplane changes a vibe, right? And so I that song does a lot for me too. I'm a big fan. I'm pretty much a big fan of all their Dylan covers.
Yeah.
That's for another show. So thanks for listening, guys. This has been a pleasure to have Dave on. He's going to be my partner in crime, like I said,
Yep, thanks.
helping me make this podcast. So I appreciate you being the first guest,
Yeah,
introducing yourself.
I'm excited.
And so let's cue up a nice recording of Masterpiece, and
Okay.
everybody enjoy.
All right.
See you next time.
The streets of Rome were filled with rubble. Ancient footprints are everywhere. Well, you can almost think that you see it double. On a cold, dark night on the Spanish Main. Gonna hurry on back to the hotel room. Where I got me in Botticelli's theme. She promised that she'd be there with me when I made my masterpiece.
Thanks for joining me on the So Many Roads podcast. I'm your host, Pete Booley. Dave Steinman is our show's technical director. Theme music by Sawyer Booley. Original artwork by Ashley Hodson. You can find us on YouTube, Meta, at our website, somanyroadspodcast.buzzsprout.com. If you have a unique story or perspective to share, feel free to make a comment on any platform or hit me up at somanyroadspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, let's keep the journey going.